Easy. We're going to go ahead and open up the budget workshop, and I will turn it over to Ms. Phyllis Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we're going to be covering several of our special revenue funds. We covered the general fund last week, so tonight we'll cover the rest of our funds. First one we'll start with is State Street Aid. I've estimated the revenues to be $1.3 million. With just a tad bit of interest earnings, give us $1,300,200. For the expenses, our major expenses for State Street Aid are street lighting and paving. For street lighting, I've estimated the expense to be $285,000, and in the paving, we've estimated about $800,000 in paving. We have a little bit of a bank service charge, and then we have one bond debt payment that comes out of this fund. So that gives us a total expense of $1,156,994. And if all, it goes well, at the end of the year, if our expenses hold true and if our revenues hold true, we would be putting about $143,000 back into State Street Aid. State Street Aid fund balance has somewhere around $2.4 million fund balance in it. Any questions about State Street Aid? Okay, we will move on to our Senior Center, Senior Citizens Fund. Revenues consist of a grant from the Rutherford County, which is $46,200. We estimated senior activities to be around $3,000. A little bit of interest, about $1,200 from Farmers Market. I've estimated about $2,000 from fundraisers, a GNRC grant of $26,800, a little bit of fund raising from the hot dog sales, and then the general fund normally donates enough to cover wages for the two full-time, one part-time employee in that fund. That's about a $130,000 donation from the city, and then that gives us a total revenue of just a little over $200,000. Next, we have our expenses. Wages would be about $130,000, wages and benefits. And again, that's for two full-time, one part-time. We're estimating postage to be about $800. Utilities, electric, water, and gas are going to run about the same as they have in previous year. Comcast cable, about $1,750 for that. $3,000 for repair and maintenance service, $1,500 for building repair and maintenance, $300 on meals and entertainment, and then of course we have office supplies at $1,200, small lines equipment of $800, operating supplies at $1,500. We increased the food just a little bit to $17,000 from $14,200. Increased fuel from $1,800 to $2,000. Bank service charges are hovering around $500. We also increased the programs from $7,000 to $10,000, and then we have the senior flyer fund at $400, and then any expenses related to any of the fundraisers, we've estimated that to be about $300. So that gives total expenses of $183,829. We have a little over $200,000 in revenue, so that would be, we would be putting about $25,000 back into the fund balance. Any questions on seniors? Okay. We will move right along to the drug fund. I'm estimating about $16,000 in court costs and fines. Estimating about $500 in impound fees. Estimating about $30,000 for awarded confiscated cash, and then interest earnings would be about $30, And then the general fund always donates about $30,000 to the drug fund every year. On the expense side, we have $10,000 in SWAT, $2,000 in membership and registration fees. Pretty much all the rest of the expenses are about the same. $1,000 for repair and maintenance on vehicle, $1,000 for towing contract, $10,000 for travel, $8,000 for SWAT weapons and ammunition, $4,000 for operating supplies, $15,000 for firearms, about $1,100 for bank service charges, and then we have 2 organizations that we donate funds to, the Tennessee Public Safety Network and Child Advocacy, and the Tennessee Social and Chief Police. And then we also have DARE expenses of around $10,000. So that's the total expenses of $78,100. We're just a little bit shy of that in revenue, so we would be needing to take about $1,570 out of the fund balance to cover that. And that leaves about $207,000 in fund balance. Now, that fund balance could fluctuate a little bit because we do have some confiscated cash that has not been awarded to the city. So at year end, we will true that up with what has been awarded to the city, and the fund balance may go up just a little bit there. Any other questions on the drug fund?
On the drug fund, that money that's advocated for, that's money that's limited to be spent. You can't spend it on everything, just a certain things you can spend that on it, right, Phyllis?
That's correct. There are some stipulations on, we can't do, we can't pay wages out of this fund. So there are some stipulations to this.
But I was thinking you could pay some overtime, is that right?
We have never used this fund to pay overtime or reimburse the general fund for overtime. I have no idea. Any other questions on the drug fund?
You're welcome.
The next is our equitable sharing fund. This is the revenue and expenses that are related to our detective that works for the feds, and we get a portion of any of the funds of any cases that he's involved in and helping to resolve or make arrest in. Pretty much we never know what this is going to be. We have some good years, we've had some bad years. This year's been kind of an unusual one where they didn't release funds for about a year, and we're starting to finally see some of those funds come in. So my forecast is actually a little low here. So it seems like I remember we have received a little bit more than just the $8,000 this year. What we're budgeting for revenue for next year is around $30,000. Like I said, we never know how much we're going to get and what cases we're going to be involved in and what cases are going to get settled during the year. As far as expenses, we only have budgeted for about $15,000 in undercover operations and $40 for bank service charges. So we have expenses of about $15,000 and we have revenue of a little over $30,000. So we would be estimating putting about $15,000 back into the fund balance after expenses. Any questions about equitable sharing? Next one is our stormwater fund. Revenues from stormwater consist of stormwater fees that are billed out to customers and businesses, and a little bit of interest income. So we're estimating about $500 in interest. Residential stormwater fees, we're estimating about $560,000. Non-residential, we're estimating about $785,000, and that's pretty consistent in where we're trended for the last few years. We do assess penalties for any late payments, so we estimate about $20,000 in revenue from late payments and penalties. And then Let me jump over here to expenses and go through the expenses. So, of course, wages are increased because, due to the health insurance and the wage increases that's been implemented. I'm going to jump down past any of the payroll numbers. Starting with line, object code 148. Didn't make a whole lot of changes down through here. I'll just highlight the ones we did. Lowered the electricity just a little bit based on prior year's experience. The main thing that we had increased is the other professional lines. And that's mainly because right now we're sharing the expense for the Public Works building design and the Gamble detention pond. Those expenses are coming out of this line item, and that's about $567,000 for the engineering work that's being done on those two projects. We did increase the repair and maintenance by $5,000. Vehicle repair, we left about the same. We increased the ditch and drainage repair, $20,000 to cover some stream monitoring and surveying. Increased operating supplies by $5,000 just because there has been major price increases in a lot of the parts and supplies that's being used. Increased fuel by $2,000. Of course, we all know why. The rest of the line items are pretty much what we budgeted prior year, and that all falls in line with how we're trending. So that gives us a total expense of $1.8 million, and that we only have about $1.4 million in revenue coming in, so we're going to have to take about $445,000 out of reserves to cover the stormwater budget.
But a lot of that's due with this new
Public
building.
Works, yeah, the building and the Gamble detention pond. And it will, go ahead.
You said revenue was 1.4?
Yes. We're taking 445 out of reserves to cover,
Oh, okay.
to get it to 1.8. Any other questions on stormwater? Okay. Next, we'll be going on capital projects streets. And this is mainly consist of impact fees, sidewalk deposits, and interest. I'm estimating those three items to be about $520,000. We do have several projects that are ongoing. We have the Old National Widening, which we anticipate about $1.2 million. The total cost for the engineering was $1.4. We've already made some. We've already paid some invoices toward that, so I'm anticipating about $1.2 million that we'll be incurring next year. The Fergus Road improvement, our portion for the Reagan Smith should be around $130,000. We've already paid about $165,000. That total cost for just the engineering was $296,000. I put in $5,000 for miscellaneous engineering. Occasionally we have some small stuff comes in that we need to expense out. We have the Sam Ridley connector design. That was a total of $275,000. We have about at the end of the year, we should have around $99,000 left to pay on that, so budgeted that amount. On the Blair Road West to Carruthers design, that was, total expense was $395,000, but we have already paid some of that this year, which leaves us about $229,000 to pay next year. South Walden Road, the engineering on that is $837,000. We've paid some invoices on that to the tune of about $184,000, so that leaves us about $652,000 to budget for next year. Charter Place and Center Point realignment. That one was a total of 1.2 million, somewhere around 1.3, and we've already paid quite a few in invoices, somewhere around 700,000 or 800,000 looks like. So we still have about 470,000 to expense for next year. Ingram and Mason intersection, that project is 150,000, and we have about 57,000 left on that project. South Waldron Road, Widening, that project was, engineering cost was 240, and we've already paid about 220 on that, so we have left 20,000 to pay in this next fiscal year. So overall, we have 2.9 million that we're pretty confident we'll see invoices for next year. And so that's going to require us to take quite a bit out of the fund balance. So we have about a $2.7 million fund balance. We'll add about 500 of that. And so at the end of the next year, we're looking at lowering that fund balance to around $300,000 if we complete all these engineering parts to the projects. This doesn't cover any of the actual construction. This is just the engineering cost. So at some point, you know, when we go further on these projects, the board will have to decide how we're going to fund those projects.
A question on there. So on South Waldron Blair Road intersection design and widening bond, so that's ongoing, I get that. But when you say South Waldron Road industrial section, which area are you referring to there?
Kyle, you have to help me out on these because you know the,
Are we talking about Blair Road?
it's the South Waldron Road in industrial section
No,
widening.
I'm talking about South Waldron
Well,
Road.
What it is basically at the very beginning of this, you know, it was discussed, do we do the whole portion? Do we do bits and pieces? How do we do it? And I think whenever it was first discussed, I think Adam had asked Phyllis to do a South Waldron for the industrial portion, which would be basically from the interstate to maybe a little bit past Stone Ridge Parkway.
Okay.
And then the residential would be the rest of it. But as Phyllis and I were talking about this, especially the way we've gone about it so far, there's no sense of even having two different pots of money. It would just be the South Waldron. So, you know, we can clean it up by just adding or put them together, really.
When Kimley Horn bills us, they bill us separately, so my natural instinct is to track it separately, so, and that, you know, that is, when we get to the construction part of that, that should be, coming out of some of the bond money too.
Yeah, but would it not make sense to put them all together though?
Yeah, I think we can put it all together.
We can. Because there was actually, when there were actually three parts to that, Kyle, there was, or was it just two?
They had talked about three, but I think just two is all that got put on this sheet.
Okay. Are there any other questions about capital project street?
So just going back then, so Carl, are we Kimberly Horn, are they starting working on that first phase one, as you want to call it?
Kimley Horn's working on South Waldron the entirety, so it's one project already.
Okay.
Like I said, this sheet, when it was put together, and I don't know another example right off the top, well, like Fergus Road Improvement Walmart, once they get put on this sheet, they're on here for, I don't know how long, if it's forever. That's probably part of the issue too, is I think it got put on here with the idea that if you did break it up, or if it needed to be broken up, it could be. Well, we're doing it as one project, so it goes back to how we do this sheet. Do we need to take some of these off, is what it really boils down to.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on capital project streets? Okay, we'll move on to capital project parks. This fund is funded by park impact fees, and then The city will make a contribution this year for $205,000, and then we'll take $212,000 out of reserves, giving us a total of $467,000 in revenues. Below are the expenses. We're looking at about $180,000 for the estimated engineering and permits for the Hurricane Creek Greenway Phase 2. We're looking at Brookside Park, our portion of being about $205,000. And then we have some professional fees, miscellaneous, we estimate about $3,000. And then we have $700 in service charges. And again, you know, the Hurricane Creek Greenway, and probably the Brookside, this is probably just covering the engineering costs and not the construction. So whenever those projects get to the construction phase, the board will have to make a decision on how to fund.
I think the Brookside is the construction.
Is it construction and?
I say with the call that I was on the week before last, they were mentioning construction in there, and
Now-
with their amounts.
David, did you say 225? Because they was talking about an additional percentage or something.
25%.
So we owed 160 something to start with, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So the additional would have been about 40, something like
So we increased it to 205.
Okay. Oh, that's fine.
And we're transferring that in from general fund because obviously this fund is pretty low, and if we didn't transfer it, we would have a really, really low balance in here.
And I think even though that money may be in that fund, that you don't have to use it. I think, so you can use a percentage. I think the state may give up to 25%. If you only end up using 15% of it, then the state will get 15%. I don't think you have to use all 25%.
Any other questions on capital projects, parks?
Is that money, is that for engineering only or for the work and everything?
No, that should be pretty much turnkey. That should be for everything, the structure. You know, once all that money is expended, then you should have a park over there.
That's strictly on Brookside though.
Brookside, yes, sir.
Yeah. The Hurricane Creek Greenway Phase 2, $180,000 is just estimated engineering and permits. Our next fund will be the police impact fees. We're estimating about $55,000 in impact fees. I kind of lowered that this year. You know, we've had couple of really good years. We're just never know what that revenue is going to be, so I kind of estimated around 55. Looking at the previous years, we were in the 60s and 70s, and then we've had a couple of good years. So that number hopefully will change, and I may be a little bit low on that. We don't have any expenses other than service charge for this bank account on this fund, and the fund balance in this account is in the $300,000 range. We did take about $237,000 out of this fund during the year to pay for some police vehicles. Any other questions? Or any-
Now on this police impact, we're not limited of what we can spend that,
Yes. It can mainly on buildings.
anything but personnel probably, ain't it?
Yeah, we
Buildings
can't
or cars.
Can't do it on any kind of routine expense, like a utility bill or fuel for a vehicle. You can buy vehicles out of it, you can do building improvements, some
But
capital
no
items.
salaries or overtime, yeah.
And you're not supposed to do like replacement vehicles either, it's for
Right, this has to be a
New
new
vehicle.
vehicle for a new officer.
not replacements.
Okay, we'll move on to our fire impact fee. This is a fairly new fund, and it's doing pretty good. we're forecasting, last year we collected about 39,000 in impact fees. This year we're expecting to collect about 76,000. And then next year I've estimated probably a little bit low, estimated about 50,000. So we don't have any expenses in this fund yet. And we have, other than the bank service charge. So we anticipate about 165,000 in fund balance at the end of the year. Any questions on the fire impact fee? Okay. Our next one, it will be water and sewer fund. And I'm just gonna go down through here and highlight the major changes of any revenues. The rent from the cell towers is about the same. We haven't had any notice of any increases. We expect water sales to be up just a little bit, about 200,000. Revenue from hydrant rentals, the fire hydrant and inspection fees, backflows, all those are about the same as last year. I did increase penalties by 5,000. We've been pretty lenient. During COVID, we were pretty lenient on that. We've kind of gone back to doing more disconnects, and with that comes additional fees. Sewer service charges, did increase that by 100,000. It's just due to growth and more accounts being added on. Everything else is pretty much the same. I did increase the water meter charge by 5,000. With that being said, that gives us revenue of about $13,138,000, plus another 150 for tap fees and 330 for sewer tap fees. Overall revenue expected for next year is $13,618,700. Moving over to expenses.
Real quick before you hop into expenses, with the cell phone towers, part of that contract was that we can do an increase reviewed every year. Can we look at that? And I believe it's the consumer price index we can increase it by each year. Have a look at that, because if we can increase that, then we want to make sure that we are, because I don't think we've been doing that traditionally, but
Okay.
we just have to provide them notice whenever we do, and then it goes from there.
Okay.
Another question, on the interest earnings, you're only showing 3,000. Are we getting the best interest on that money?
Interest rates are low.
I'm just,
Yeah.
the percentage,
That, I mean, that's the best that we're getting right now. I mean, without bidding it out or sending it, bidding it out for, a new banking service. Okay, and where did it go?
But that's just, we just had that money in savings. We don't have it in no,
Yeah, it's just in a regular checking.
yeah, you ain't gonna get nothing checking.
do we know what we're getting now, the amount of interest? Do you know what you're getting on that account?
It's very, very low. I don't know the exact, I don't know the exact percentage. I can look that up for you. Okay, moving over to expenses for the water sewer fund. For the first line item is the other wages, and this is the allocations where we allocate expenses from other departments to this department, such as, there's a lot of departments do things for water treatment plant, like finance, engineering, HR, IT, admin. So we do some allocation where we charge some expense to this department because another department has doing some services for them. Utilities, I left the electric the same, I left the water the same. Telephone I reduced just a little bit, looking at the prior year's history. Audit fees are about the same. Engineering is the same. Did increase the other professional services, which is our fee that we pay to Inframark. I did increase that slightly, because that does increase by the CPI every year, and it averages around a 3% increase. And so I took the 1.6 million, 1,688,000, and multiplied by the 3% to come up with a new rate for next year. And it's an estimated rate until, and they changed their rate in the middle of the year, in February, so we'll see how that goes. The rest of the expenses are pretty much the same. I did increase depreciation a little bit there, so that's the total expenses for the water treatment plant of $3,002,889. For sewer maintenance, wages and benefits were increased based on the current rate structure and the increases that have happened. So the first line item basically we need to look at, start with, is line item 148, which is employee education and training. No major changes there, all the way down to sewer. This is where this is the money that we pay to Metro Water and Sewer. Increase that by 3%. They do have an increase generally in October every year. Cell phones I increased just slightly to coincide with previous year's expenses. Audit fees are remaining about the same. There's a little bit of an increase this year, but we have enough in there to cover that increase. No increase to architectural and engineering services. We did increase other professional services about $5,000 based on previous year's trending. We did increase the chemical line due to price increasing. And we did increase the clothing and uniforms by $500 just to balance out the expenses to prior year's experience. Fuel, we increased by $4,000, went from $20,000 to $24,000. Microsoft license has been coming in a little bit lower than what we expected, so I reduced that. And then depreciation went up by $10,000. That gives a total budget for sewer department for $5.3 million. Water maintenance, again, we have our wages and benefits. Going down to education and training, we had no increases there. We did decrease the electric a little bit based on prior year's trending. Decreased the natural gas cost down to $1,000. We had just based that on the trending that we've had the last few years. No major changes till we get down to operating supplies. We increased that by $5,000, not much at all. And we increased the fuel by $3,000. The rest of the line items stay about the same until you get down to depreciation. I did increase depreciation by $25,000. So that gives a total budget for water maintenance at $3,191. Water billing, of course, we know that wages again. Jumping down to starting with employee education and training. We made a slight adjustment to line item 260, which is repair and maintenance, and that's our local government software maintenance renewal, annual renewal. We did increase the fuel by $800, just looking at how we've trended in the last couple of years. It's been gradually going up, plus the fact that the prices have gone up, so I did increase that from 16 to 2,400. And then depreciation went up by $1,000, which gives us a total budget of $804,731. Under our miscellaneous section, this is where we have some bond-related expenses. Some of these are entries that the auditors give us at year-end, and some of them are some that we can actually calculate ourselves. But we are anticipating to spend about $430,000 on interest on bonded debt, and then we have about $200,000 in bad debt expense that we anticipate writing off. So that gives the total expenses for water treatment plant, sewer, water billing, and our miscellaneous bond payments at $12,768,000. And we have $13,618,000 in revenue that we anticipate receiving. And so that would give us about a surplus of $849,000. And in the little section here at the bottom, I'm not sure if you have a copy of it or not, I've kind of done a little reconciliation of, because there's some items in the water sewer fund that you don't ever see budgeted, like principal payments, capital projects. So what I've done down here is I've kind of done a little summary. You know, we have about $30 million in cash to start off with. We're expecting to put about $850,000 back into reserves. We expect to expense about $5,000 in capital projects. We have $2.3 million in depreciation, which is not a cash outlay. And then we had debt services, bond payments of $1.2 million. So that gives us possibility at the end of next year, a fund balance of about $27 million. Any questions? Well, that sums up all of our other funds, other than general fund. I think Bruce wanted to spend some time maybe talking about ARPA money and what we can and can't do with ARPA. I've also attached, again, the retreat list for capital and operating requests. I've made some slight changes to some of the numbers. Not anything, I don't think I've added anything major, but if you want, you can compare this list to your previous one to see what changes were made. Anyway, you know, I'll open it up for discussion on ARPA. We have about is it 5.2 or $5.4 million that we had received for water projects. And Bruce and Kyle can probably talk more on what kind of projects or what projects we want to start looking at using that money for. We have to actually have a plan and submit that to the comptroller's office, to the ARPA portal, and we have to have these projects started by 2024, I think it is, Bruce?
Correct. All of the money has to be allocated by the end of December 2024. We have to spend it, use it by the end of December 2026. So as you know, some of these projects will take some time to get completed, especially right now with the supply chain being the way it is with materials and whatnot. So as far as the ARPA funds, you know, for the most part, just about any kind of water, sewer, or really stormwater even, project can be used with ARPA funds, can be done with ARPA funds.
I know you went over this, but I forget, what is ARPA? What's that
It's
stand
American Rescue Plan. It's the stimulus money that
for
the
COVID?
feds gave last year.
Okay,
They approved, I believe it was March of last year, and then everybody got their initial allocation in October last year, which was we just got just under 5.3 million, and our second half of that is supposed to come this next October. So in total, we'll have around $10.6 million.
And it can only be spent for,
Well, I mean, it can be used for a lot of different things, but the primary uses are utilities, water and sewer, even stormwater. But there are things in general fund that we could use it for if we provide the proper justification and make sure it meets all of the requirements that the feds have put out there, which is very complicated, to say the least, as usual with anything to do with the feds. Today, Kamisha and I sat in on a virtual workshop with TDEC. Another thing to think about is they have some grants that they have created with their ARPA funds that they received from the feds. So we can actually use part of our ARPA funds as a match and get some more money from the state for our water and sewer projects. And those pretty much are just for water and sewer. So it really makes sense, if we're going to use ARPA funds for water and sewer anyway, to go ahead and go for those grants to pay for more of our projects that we need to get completed that are water and sewer related. There are some stipulations. Of course, you have to provide justification. You have to put that plan in place, which, you know, we need to have a special workshop just to talk about ARPA. And we need to get some things lined up as far as what we can use it on. But anything dealing with the National Drinking Water Act, and there's another one, I forget what it is, those projects are all basically eligible for these funds. So basically, we've got $10 million, you know, that we can use towards water and sewer. Of course, like I said, we could use part of it towards some general fund projects, but those are a little more tricky. And then, of course, we have the extra grant funding on top of that. So, you know, there's a lot of funding out there right now that we can use. We just need to get our priorities in the order that we need them to be for these water and sewer projects and go from there.
can it be used at the water plant?
Yes, I believe it could. I mean, it's our plant, so yes, we could. And there are obviously some projects in that capital plan that we could use that for.
Well, I think we need to get that workshop scheduled. We also need, has TDEC released a list of their grants as far as any specifics on it, or are they still talking in general terms?
They've released portions of it. They do have a handbook out there that I think Kamisha does have. They showed part of that today on that workshop that I attended. So yes, they do have it. They will be accepting the applications for the non-competitive grants. I believe they said starting in June. So, you know, we'll have to have that workshop probably in May in order to be prepared to submit for that non-competitive grants. And I believe they're accepting those, I want to say it was August. They gave us a ton of information today, so it's kind of hard to keep straight, but so, and there's a whole funding formula. There is a matching portion that we would have to provide and all of that. So
But we'd
we can
provide
have that
through
workshop
ARPA.
in May, you know, then we can have those plans ready for that application process.
That matching portion we'd provide through ARPA or through our water sewer fund?
You can really do any funding that you'd want to, but the best way would be those ARPA funds.
Yeah. Yeah,
So we need to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would like to see if there's anything with the tube settlers. I know whenever Alderman Waldron and I went through there, you could see where age is already getting to it. They're starting to damage, and if we're able to move that up and go ahead and address it, and that can help, you know, improve our water quality, ideally, that's what I'd like to do.
Yeah, you stole my thunder. I was gonna say that last week, and that, so I guess we need to get back into this thing that Kyle gave us and start studying it.
Well, Bruce, if you could go ahead and start working on scheduling that workshop,
Okay?
and that way we can go ahead and get all the information to all the board members, and we can have that discussion.
I will pull together some possible dates and see what everybody's availability is.
Going with what Alderman No say, we've already, I think, answered most of our questions with our listing we have already.
Yeah, that's
Yep,
what I'm
yep.
saying.
It's
Take
right
the
here.
first two sheets, water and sewer, I mean, there's some big projects on there that need to be addressed,
Yes, sir.
and it fits
When
right in.
I toured that plant, man, that stuff, and I know Kyle's very adverse in that's scary.
Yeah, tube cellars definitely need to be replaced, in my opinion, so.
But even if you're looking at the total of everything that they're suggesting, that's still not the $10 million. So we still have a lot on the plate to go through and figure out.
Well, and plus when you add in the extra grant money that the state is providing, we really have more than just the $10 million. So-
Correct. That's just working off what we already have.
Correct, correct.
It adds up pretty fast though right now, because we had a bid opening today and still going through it, but they're quite a bit higher than what estimates were because of materials and just all of it.
Bruce, can this be used, ARPA funds, I want to say that, I remember something about we can use them possibly in buildings?
I think you'd be better to use them on a renovation type project than you would a new project, just because of the time frames involved where you have to spend the money by. But yes, it is possible we can use them for building projects. We've discussed that as a possibility for the police department expansion and renovation project. And I think that's really the only one that we've really even looked at as a possibility at this point.
Okay.
I'm excited. This will be the first time in many years that we've got the opportunity to get our water better, you know.
We've been making progress over the
We've
years.
been making progress, yes, sir.
Invested a lot of money in it, but at the
We've done
same
a lot of
time,
progress.
if we can knock off several years' worth of upgrades and replacements, ideally that benefits everyone.
Well, the budget was for the funding, I had 3.3 million, that's what
Yeah.
we're looking at, so.
So, I mean, even before you get to the grant portion, even if you take in a very, very pessimistic, let's say that 3.3 winds up being 5, well, that's still about half of what we have.
So what's already came in along with what possibly could come in is close to $10 million?
Yes, sir.
And
And we
did
have used a
spend-
portion of that for the premium pay that we did back in October last year for all the city employees. So a portion we have already spent, so we are probably closer to that, $9.5 to $10 million range as far as what is left on the ARPA funds.
Any other questions on ARPA?
I don't think I got it, the ARCA is, I like to see it spent on a one-time purchase, not a spread out deal, because we're probably just gonna get it one time. They probably might come out next year with another deal, but
Well, that's the only thing we
Yeah.
can use it on is capital projects. We can't use it on anything personnel or
Yeah.
operating expense.
Just whatever we do, we need to make sure that we make that a priority and get something in place and at least get it filed with,
The state.
the ARPA program, so that they see that we are making some effort to spend that money, because we don't want them to retract that money back if we're not spending it. I mean, we've obviously got plenty of projects. I know it takes a while to get these projects done, but, if we can at least get started on them, they can't. I don't think they can pull the funds back if we're already in the middle of a project.
So it doesn't have to be actually all gone by 2024, it just has to be in a,
It has to be committed, contracts in place by the end of '24,
And,
but the construction has to be finished by the end of '26.
I mean, it's taken us forever to get engineering done for projects. I mean, you've seen a lot of the projects that we have going on. We've been working on engineering, some of them for 2 years, and we haven't even got to the construction phase. So, these are some things we need to think about.
So until that ARPA's money's gone, Phyllis can't leave, is that my understanding?
Yes, yes.
I
I'm
think
good
you're
with
gonna
that.
find that everywhere. I think every city's having trouble with engineering. I think, everybody's hurting on engineering. The engineers have been the holdup on everything.
And then when you do,
So much people are doing so much stuff.
and then when you do get to construction, you don't have materials, so it's,
Yeah, I want to say that even with our own engineering director search, Andrew said there was 600 and plus openings with a similar job description at that point. So that's a lot of openings considering how busy Middle Tennessee is.
hey,
Well, that's good info, good to know. I like, anytime I can see a light at the end of a tunnel, it makes you feel good about things. That's good.
so for next week, next Monday at 5:30, we'll have our final budget workshop, and that workshop will consist only of the items that were presented during the retreat, the items that you have the list on. So we need to make sure, you know, decisions need to be made next week. We can't keep pushing this one on because we do have a workshop next Thursday night, and we need to have a budget ordinance ready for the workshop. So that gives me about 2 days to put together a very lengthy ordinance.
No pressure.
So please, try to,
Another issue or item we need to talk about tonight is the contract with Inframark. As I believe most of you are aware, we are in the final year of the initial term of that agreement, which would expire at the end of January of 2023. We had previously talked about putting an RFP out again for those services. Due to the economy and the way things are with pricing going up like they have, we need to make that final determination as to whether we put this back out for proposals or if we go ahead and enter into the 1-year renewal. I believe we have 2 1-year renewals that we can enter into with our existing contract, which would be, the prices are already set. It's just a matter of what the CPI or whatever that index is that would increase the current contract. It might be a little more reliable since we already know what those costs are. Whereas if we put a proposal out, we don't know what those new proposals will come back at with the way costs have gone up across the country. So if you could discuss or have questions about Inframark and if we want to stay with them and renew the optional years, we can certainly do that. Or if you want us to move forward with the RFP process like we talked about several months ago, we can certainly do that. But that really needs to be discussed because that will have an impact on the budget as well.
Well, my opinion is with inflation being over 8%, it'd be wiser to renew right now and see if inflation goes back down and go from there. Otherwise, we're guaranteed we're going to be paying significantly more. Thoughts?
I totally concur. Yeah, I think, it's not broke at the moment. Leave it alone and do the contract, and if we see something in I guess the next board or whatever, then we can go from there. But with this money coming in, those guys have already got the problems figured out, what they need. So, and we talked about the city doing it, and maybe, who knows, in a few years, but,
Yeah, we're not in a place right now to do it.
no, we're not in a place right now to do it. Yeah, I personally don't have a problem with those guys and what they're doing, and that's my opinion.
I would go with that. I would agree with that. What's going on with this at the moment is just kick in one of the options and then move forward from there.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Well, what we'll do is we'll look at that contract and see what our steps are. to renew that, or what the case may be. That may be an item that has to come before the board up for a vote. So we'll check on that and see what we need to do, and we'll have further discussion about that at another workshop.
Okay. Bless you. So next we've got, pretty much we need to go through capital. We need to make some decisions there. And we've also got another workshop this upcoming Monday, the 25th. And that's where pretty much we need to finalize everything. We're also going to hear from some of our nonprofits as usual. I would say invite those that are requesting just like normal. I know the last couple of years, we've pretty much just invited everybody. They can speak to the board and go from there.
That was one thing I was wanting to ask also, is if there were any specific nonprofits that everybody wanted to hear from, because, you know, I don't know that we, like you said, need to hear from everybody or not, but so we'll have a room full,
They usually go in and out though.
usually.
So you want me to contact every one of them?
Probably, I mean, some of them are pretty much, well, I guess we all know in our heart, I don't know that we need all of them. There's probably a few, maybe we can email Bruce and each one of us and ask who they'd like, or we can get all of them.
Well, I mean, you can say here who's left. I mean, we've got our regular ones, which are Paws. They ask for money. Can't remember if Nourish asked this year or not, but you've got Club Knockout. We've got Crime Stoppers didn't ask for money.
You've got, here's the list right here.
Did Pause request this year?
Mid Cumberland is a pretty normal one we see every year,
Files has not requested. So you got the chamber,
which we know them.
that is requested, you got RTA and GNRC, which those are kind of contractual type.
Service-based.
So we don't need those. You got the health department, you got Mid Cumberland, you've got CASA, and then you got child advocacy.
Let's just do this. We've got the list right here. Is there anybody specifically anybody wants to see?
I don't have anybody myself, but there's one group up there that I'd like to ask, that something different, the Meals on Wheels, where's it at? I can't see.
Right here.
It's Mid Cumberland,
The Meals on Wheels, how much did they ask for?
7,500.
They have knocked it out of the park for our seniors. I'd like to see that at 10,000, if it's possible.
Now, we've been funding them at 5.
Yeah.
That's,
Oh, I thought you said 75.
that's how much they've requested is 75, which they've
Okay,
requested 75. That's regularly as they ask for the Meals on Wheels section. They regularly ask for 75, but like last year, they were showing, we had them up here, they were showing where they were doing less homes, but wanted more money, and that was decided not to move forward on, so.
Does anybody have a record of how many homes they done? I done that Meals on Wheels about 7 years ago, and at that time, the day that I done it, we hit about 7 or 8 homes. I don't know if it varies, but I don't know how many homes they.
Should be in their packet of information, isn't it, Phyllis?
I can look that up.
Okay, thank you.
To answer your question, Bruce, I don't have anyone specific that want to speak to. I'm okay with the
I
list.
mean, we've got 2 on here that we've never dealt with before. I would say definitely invite them.
Okay.
What is it? Artist
Perspective.
Perspective and Graceful Gems. Graceful Gems just got in their 501c3 information last week, I think. Was that the group that dropped it off, or was it?
You know, she was going to email me that. I haven't seen it yet, but it could be in my spam folder. Let me
Okay.
look at that.
I thought there was one group that dropped off over at front desk. But, we're from,
What is that? Is that like
What?
Artista down there? We don't know.
I don't know, that's why I said the two of them, we would definitely want to hear from, because we've never had any interactions with them. Club Knockout, we're familiar with, CASA, the Chiefs Association, we're familiar with all of that. So Motlow, so just those two? Anyone else have any others?
So
I
just,
don't have any other, but what I like to say is, you know, I know it's in our package, but the regular citizens out there, I like them to find out exactly, like the Meals on Wheels, how stops they have, and even with the others, you know, what it assists of for Laverne. You know, it's the people's money, so, you know, they ought to at least be aware of what services they put on, you know. I'm seeing a lot of them on there, and I'm sure every one of them is a great organization. And I know the Meals on Wheels, I got into that about 7 years ago, delivering Meals on Wheels. And, you know, I'm sure every one that we went to appreciated a meal, you know. I just, you know, but the average person, you know, they have no idea how many meals are delivered weekly or daily in Laverne.
okay.
I know, I've done one day, I think I done 7 or 8. I don't know if it varies from day to day or not.
I know they're bringing about 45. David, is that a pretty good number? About 45 every Monday to our seniors, and in those boxes are meals for every day of the week plus milk. And they've really stepped their game up, so
No, they're bringing it to the Senior Citizen Center.
that's correct.
Well, see, you still don't know how many actually in Laverne, because a lot of the people at the Senior Citizen Center lives outside Laverne. So I like to find out how many is really provided for Laverne. If they live in Smyrna or Mount Juliet or Nolensville or Davidson County, you know, it's good, but I like to know how many actually is serviced in Laverne. I know what I done in Meals on Wheels to the homes. I don't remember going to about 7 or 8 houses, but that was just, I just done it like one day a week.
Okay, so I think it's safe to say, Alderman Waldron's wanting Mid-Cumberland to come and speak to what all they're doing. Is
Well,
that
they
fair?
can, but you know, just how many meals do they deliver, you know, in a month's time in Laverne? You know, 'cause we went to Smyrna to pick up the, when I delivered them, we went to Smyrna to pick up the trays. And we brought them to Laverne and distributed them. And my memory's not as good as it used to be, but I don't believe we done about 7 or 8 on the day that I delivered it. But I'm just, if we do more than 7 or 8 a day, is it 40, if it's 45 a day, that's great. But I just don't remember doing no more than, and this was like a few years back, 7 or 8 a day, and I don't think I missed maybe 2 or 3 weeks of doing it. But, you know, that's just curiosity and to see, you know, how many that's actually provided in Laverne. It's just like, if we give them $7,500 to deliver 7 meals a week to Laverne, we would be better off just to give the people that would deliver the food, the money would be cheaper to do that. That's what I say, I'd just like to see what's, what we get our money spent for.
So just to clarify, would you like Mid-Cumberland to show up and speak to this, or
They
would
can,
you,
they
or,
can, but
well, hold on,
basically,
or
I
would
wanna
you,
know-
hold on, Alderman Waldron, or would you prefer that the information be provided to us from the packet that they submitted, which states what they've done?
Yeah.
Which would you prefer, those two?
Well, really, be best for them to come to talk, because that would be on the people would know. If they put it in a package, the average citizen don't get our package.
Okay,
know,
so
and-
that's simple enough, if
It'd
you
be
could
better
add that,
to-
Ms. Phyllis.
to explain, if somebody said, well, how come we're giving $7,500 to Meals on Wheels? They said, we don't get Meals on Wheels. They said, well, here's what they do, get them to explain what they do.
So is there any other of the nonprofits anyone is looking to see or hear from?
No.
Okay, so it looks like just
Yeah,
those
three.
those three.
Well, to me, if we're gonna give them money, I'd like for them to all come and explain what they're gonna do. Then it'd be on camera, then the citizen would know where their money's going.
These are not televised though, are
The budget retreat is, yes, these are televised, these are recorded, and then they're broadcast on Channel 3 and on the city's YouTube, so, yes. But yes, we can, it's just gonna pack the house, but that's not a problem, we can have people in and out, just like we originally suggested.
They don't need to go in a no 2-hour deal, but they can basically say, like on the Meals on Wheels, last month, we delivered an X amount of meals to Laverne.
Well, I'm sure each one will speak to what they do in the community, as well as, if we have a few, like the Art is Perspective and the Graceful Gems, they're gonna have to explain even to the board what they do in the community, so it's not gonna be, or what they're proposing to do in the community. So, it'll take a little bit, but that's not a problem.
So what about the retirement and the lights and the, what's the other thing that drove me crazy?
So-
The water plant.
So, the water plant, we were talking about that.
No, the testing and the galvanized
Oh,
pipe and all that.
the- The lead and copper rules.
Yeah, lead and copper.
So that's where they've got to put together a plan for going out and checking those lines for the older portions, for homes built before 1990. The lights, we have not made a decision on. We're waiting on that final number to come in from PATH. So we don't really have enough information to say yes or no, because we don't have a dollar figure on it yet.
Is there another company that does that, or is that it?
Well, I'm sure there's another company that's out there, but this is the company that has already gone through and has already done the audit. Any group that we bring in would probably have to start from scratch all over again.
And this company's done more in Middle Tennessee area than any other company. Some of the other companies are more up and down the East Coast and areas like that. This one's more Southeast regional than anybody else, from what I've been told.
That's another thing kind of always aggravated me. For years I've been here, the federal government wanted to gonna do mandate stuff for the local government, but they call it unfunded mandates. That's always, if they want small cities and towns to do something and mandate it, they ought to put some money behind it.
And then to answer your last question about retirement. So the information that was sent over to Bruce is pretty much to go with the expanded 401K. Is that fair to say, Bruce?
Yes, the feedback that I received from most all of the members is to stay with what we have and make improvements to that program where the employees have more options and can make that determination on their own to contribute more and receive more matching funds from the city. So we will get with Mission Square and see what it will take to make those changes to the plan, and that will come back to the board for a vote down the road. I'm not sure exactly when.
And then at the same time, just to kind of update everybody about retirement, I know we had some discussions about that there's some population of the city that's not actively engaged in retirement at all, in any way, shape, or form. Andrew has been reaching out to employees who aren't involved in it about getting involved with it and trying to increase that number. So, and that's an ongoing effort. It's not just kind of a one-time deal. So sometimes it takes effort. Sometimes people just aren't aware, and with onboarding, they just do the basics, but he's working with them and seeing who wants to get in and who really truly doesn't want to. So,
And we've had several new signups because of that. So it's reaping rewards already for
Yes.
those employees.
so
And there again, we can always, next year or year after, if city's in better shape or whatever, we can go to the other if need be.
You can join TCRS at any time, what they call prospectively, as long as you're not buying back years of service. And there is a fixed rate. I sent an email to our contact at TCRS to find out what that was, and I've not heard back from him yet. I believe it's 6% to start for that first year, but he has not verified that with me yet.
okay.
Bruce, in order to enhance the 401, do we want to include that in the budget, or do we want to give employees some time to see who all's going to participate? Because I would hate to go through like we do right now and we automatically assume that everybody's going to contribute, and because that would make that number probably a lot higher than what it really should be. So do we want to discuss it for approval, but yet not include it in the budget until we do a review on it, maybe 3 or 6 months? I mean, it's kind of hard to budget that because I don't feel like nobody's going to utilize 100% of that.
Right. Not everybody's going to go to 100% right off the bat. So, yeah, we may want to plan on doing that as a budget amendment after we see what kind of increases people are doing and plan for it accordingly. But obviously, to start it out, it'll have to come back through Board of Mayor and Alderman for approval. I think we have good numbers in there now for the retirement based on the 4.5% that we currently match. So really what the city would be out if we had 100% participation would be that extra 3.5%. So you're not quite doubling it, but it's not far from that. So yeah, I don't see why we couldn't wait a few months to see how that's going and then make a budget amendment to catch us up where we need to be.
Okay. Any more questions? Bruce, anything else?
I can't think of anything. Kyle, anything?
Okay. Well, we will reconvene at 5:30 on Monday. Thank you, everyone.
My bad.